urge the media to stop vilifying homeless people.
Woo! Yeah! Yeah!
I've only got 3 minutes. The greatest obstacle to rational thought is narcissism. The fantasy that we are perfectly formed, that we are without schizophrenia, alcoholism, addiction, brain damage, chronic illness and trauma, and that we have a healthy family home and support network to catch us if we need their help. I'm without many of these, but I'm not without a chronic invisible illness with multiple morbidities. I'm not. I'm not without a highly abusive family pattern of narcissistic abuse. I'm not without grieving the loss of my sister from suicide because of that abuse. But I'm full of empathy and I have a conscience and I'm currently homeless. Robert Doyle. This is the third time in my life that I've been homeless and it's due to family violence this time. And I'm on DSP. The only difference to the people at Flinders Street Station is that I am lucky enough to have a car. You've callously found those people from Flinders Street. I cannot be put into emergency housing either because I have a best friend and I have a daughter who's obviously very kind. And she's adorable and I refuse to leave her. I feel disempowered, vulnerable, insecure and scared. Okay. And I feel lucky enough that I get to sleep in a car. I got into honours degree at Victoria University this year to major in psychology. I've got a science degree as well. I've worked in research, which is a non-industry anymore in this country. And I'm petrified at the moment that my dreams of being a registered psychologist is slipping away. I urge the council to vote against the amendment. It's not in your best interest. Why not just give us a place to live? Offer us free counselling, therapy, healthcare, rehab if we want it, and let us decide if we want to participate. For those of us with learned helplessness, for those people with learned helplessness, just let them decide. Let them feel safe and let them live on the street if that's all they know. They're not hurting anybody.
Yep. Woo!
Your amendment is hurting them, and this is meant to be the world's most livable city. Not the world's most vulnerable to the people in need.
Council, I tender a written submission which I'll direct your attention to at a later point when you have time to do that. I'll concentrate on 3 principal points which are, to say the least, alarming and to say the worst, downright frightening. Firstly, your process. At no point in the course of the development of your prior consideration of this up to December last year through an expert advisory panel and other means, and more recently through this process, at no point in any documentation is a single name of a current rough sleeper on anywhere on your list of persons involved, consulted with, informed by, related to, referred to, invited, attended, or otherwise given access to a process about their survival. That is the word that is on the table here. The survival of people on the streets of this world's most livable city. So my point is your process is fundamentally flawed and the whole proposal should be stood aside until that process is remedied. And by that I mean it must include homeless people who are rough sleeping in Melbourne and people they choose to act as their advocates. And I stridently and loudly proclaim here and now and forever will that that does not include the council to homeless persons who do not speak for, represent, communicate with, interact with or advocate for the rights of people sleeping rough. My second point is this. You have made great note of the need to communicate with the public about the impact of, quote, donating to people sleeping rough. 2 sub-points. 1, where is the communication information campaign to the people whose lives you are tearing apart? When do they get informed other than through the Herald Sun, the media and other means to find out that today they are legal, tomorrow they may not be? And I draw your attention to 2 weeks ago where in 3 days they were about to be made criminals, then they weren't according to you, Lord Mayor, and the next day they again were. The state government has weighed into this and expressed a view that they are fully supportive of banning rough sleeping. Minister Lisa Neville is on record as condoning this, as is the Chief Commissioner of Police. This is an outrage that indicts this state and the machinery and apparatus of government. The final point I make at this point is this. $24.5 million since May 11, 2016 invested by the State Government of Victoria and this Council. $24.5 million committed to be spent on saving, salvaging or otherwise topping and tailing rough sleepers into something you can accept. This is not good enough. If you cannot make this work with a bucket load of money, perhaps you should rethink your whole approach and start talking to the people whose lives you wish to redefine in your own image. People don't necessarily want a house. People live on the street. They call it home. Give them a break.
Thanks,
let
Mark.
them live in peace.
Thanks, Mark. And now call on Homeless Persons Union Victoria. Did we hear that? No. Homeless Persons Union Victoria.
I'm from the Homeless Persons Union Victoria. There's nothing much that I can say that adds anything greater than what the speakers before me have said. We pretty much share the same sentiments in condemning these proposals, these amendments, and this education campaign that you're thinking of rolling out. But firstly, I'd just like to say that I'm disappointed that I did organise for an Auslan interpreter to be here this evening, so that somebody who is currently rough sleeping had the opportunity to communicate, and that fell through. So I'd just like to make mention of that. But he has written out something that he would like me to communicate. His name is Jonathan Hardy, and he asked why a Vic Deaf worker did not help him when he was homeless to get a house, when he was staying on Flinders Street, and a job. He said he doesn't do drugs, he's good, he's fit. Maybe he should move to the USA where he could find some work over there. Yes, once again, he doesn't do drugs, he's homeless, but he lives on the street. He goes to the gym, he eats well, he eats good food. Yes, but he's disappointed that he didn't receive any housing and health assistance when he was on Flinders Street. So the HPUV has made 2 submissions today. One was a bunch of interviews that we conducted with people sleeping rough that was submitted to the Royal Commission into Family Violence, and I'd like you to please take note of that. And the second thing we submitted was a petition that we've had going for a few weeks now, and that title of that petition is Public Space for All, Melburnians Against the Criminalisation of Homelessness. And in the 2 weeks that we've had that petition running, we've had something in the proximity of 674 people signing that petition and 80-something comments. So if you could please take a note of that before making your decision. Thank you very much.
Today, I stumbled across the Melbourne for All People strategy, where goal number 6 states, Melbourne is a place where people are involved in civic decision making and where all voices are recognised, heard and valued. That's not happened to this community. For the last 5 weeks, we've been hearing about our lives and what the outcome is going to be through the Herald Sun. That's not good enough. This is supposed to be a city for all people. Homeless people do count and they do matter. A couple of years ago, I was working for the Electoral Commission, signing people up to vote in the city of Melbourne. They are residents, people can vote, and they should have a say in the decisions that affect their lives. I'm on the Homelessness Advisory Committee. This has not even come through there. It really feels like a whole heap of captain's calls have been made and decisions because of the Herald Sun, and it really isn't good enough. I do ask that you defer making any decisions tonight until you have spoken to the community affected. Thank you.
I'm the Manager and Principal Lawyer of Justice Connect Homeless Law, and I did want to start by commending the City of Melbourne for some of the progressive work and the collaboration that you have done in relation to homelessness and rough sleeping. Justice Connect has been proud to work with you on some best practice initiatives, including Project Connect Respect. Homeless Service Coordination and the Women's Homelessness Prevention Project. And it is in that sentiment or context of respect and collaboration that we must urge you to pause and not to proceed any further with the proposed amendments to the local laws this evening. Homeless Law is the only specialist legal service for people experiencing at risk of homelessness in Victoria. We provide legal representation and social work support to about 500 clients every year. For over 100 of them, we can stop homelessness before it starts. But for 100 more, we're dealing with what is the unrelenting impact of the law on people who are living their private lives in public places. In addition, in 2013, I had the privilege of doing a Churchill Fellowship. I travelled to 9 cities. I spoke with 60 experts about the very issue that you are contemplating this evening, homelessness and the regulation of public space. And it is with this knowledge from direct work and from research that we know that a law that is this broad and a ban on camping that is this broad will push people to the outskirts of the city. It will exacerbate vulnerability, it will isolate them from services. A very similar law with very similar motivations was introduced in Denver, Colorado. A university-based survey of 500 people experiencing homelessness in that city was done. 2/3 of them identified that they had moved to hidden areas and to less safe areas as a result of that ban. As the Council of Homeless Persons identified, there is a significant risk it will cause people to become caught up in the justice system as a result of fines and charges. We already assist 100 clients every year who get fines and charges as a direct result of homelessness. We don't want that to increase. I will have to reiterate, we are all on the same page here. Nobody wants people sleeping on the streets in the City of Melbourne, but we do need to focus on what works. We do need to focus on long-term housing. We need to resist the temptation to introduce a measure like this, which is reactive. It won't work, it won't deliver the solution that the community or the council is looking for.
Councillor,
Kate Brown.
I'm not Kate Brown, but my name is Phil Swanee. I am speaking on behalf of the Law Institute tonight.
Thank you.
So I'm the chair of the Human Rights Committee of the Law Institute of Victoria, and I thank the Lord Mayor and the Council for the opportunity to speak tonight. The Law Institute of Victoria is very concerned about the introduction of these proposed local laws. These amendments which will broaden the restriction on public camping in the Melbourne CBD and provide expanded powers to move on rough sleepers. Currently, camping is banned in Melbourne only if campers use a vehicle, tent, caravan or any type of temporary or provisional form of accommodation. However, the proposed change would expand this to prohibit all camping in a public space. The wording of this proposed change is very broad and could potentially capture people who are sleeping in sleeping bags or blankets. While we acknowledge that public spaces should be regulated to promote community health and safety, this should not be achieved through increased penalties and move-on laws that victimise some of the most vulnerable members in our community. Police and council employees already have extensive powers to address issues such as aggressive behaviour and public drunkenness. Moving homeless individuals away from Melbourne CBD will not solve the problems that are creating homelessness and will merely move people elsewhere. People may be pushed out to areas that do not have adequate services, limiting their opportunity to access these services which they need. Moving homeless people out of the CBD may expose them to a greater risk of violence. The right not to have a person's home or privacy interfered with is a right protected by the Victorian Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities. The criminalisation of people living on the street for everyday activities can also raise other human rights concerns, such as discrimination or cruel, inhuman and degrading treatment. Introducing penalties for street camping will not solve current issues of housing affordability and other factors leading to increased homelessness. Relying on move-on and infringement powers to address issues of homelessness and poverty is ineffective and counterproductive. This approach imposes a significant burden on courts and police and results in highly vulnerable people becoming caught up in the justice system and exacerbating the difficulties that come with homelessness and with poverty. There are other ways to address these issues. In this light, the Law Institute of Victoria welcomes the Victorian Government's announcement of a new emergency response package to provide housing and support for rough sleepers in the Melbourne CBD, and emphasises the importance of the City of Melbourne and the Victorian Government continuing to work together with support services and agencies to come up with a long-term strategy and service-based solution to homelessness in Victoria. As the Lord Mayor recently noted, Melbourne should not be a city that pushes out homeless people, depriving them of access to services and endangering their safety. We call on councillors not to support this proposed amendment and instead to focus on enhanced service delivery and evidence-based models for addressing issues of homelessness, poverty and housing affordability.
Thanks very much.